Let's test. Okay, perfect. Working. Let's get everything set up all nice as I like it. Let's see here what I can do. Come on. Don't want that. Okay, that should be about right. Almost 5 o'clock. Actually, you know what? I already have a couple people in the audience, if you will. So actually, just now it is 5 o'clock. Welcome everybody to Just G Live. This is the 12th episode. I think I'll probably have to go back and change the title of this stream. But thank you all for tuning in today. We will be talking about the AL West, shifting from the NL over to the AL, the American League. The AL West, one of the arguably more, I should say, less competitive, but more successful divisions in baseball the last couple years, but not for good reason necessarily. There are some things to talk about. This division is made up of the Houston Astros, Oakland Athletics, Texas Rangers, Los Angeles Angels, and the Seattle Mariners. So, real quick before I get started, I would just, of course, like to reach out there, say, I hope everybody's doing well in these very difficult times. I hope that everybody is making sure that they're staying active, kind of staying involved, staying collected during this quarantine. It is tough for everybody, and I just hope that everything that I'm doing for you guys, it's not just for you guys, it's for myself. It helps keep me sane, having at least some sports to talk about. And I just appreciate all the love and support that I've been getting while I've been working on this. And during the show, if you guys ever have any questions or any comments that you want me to address, just throw up in the chat. I'll make sure I get to it at least at some point during the stream. With all that said, I think it's time to just get right into it. So the AL West, as I said, the teams that compose this division are the Astros, the A's, the Rangers, the Angels, and the Mariners. Going through them based on their records from last season, the Houston Astros won the division because, of course, they did, with a record of 107 and 55, breaking the 100 win mark yet again. The A's, I should say, were not too far behind, going 97 and 65. They actually made their way to a playoff spot, losing in the wild card game to the Tampa Bay Rays. The Texas Rangers. So here's the thing with this division. Two teams seemingly are very good, or at least good enough to make the playoffs, and then the rest of the teams, as of last year, one of these or a couple of these teams have been very, very busy this offseason, really, really trying to improve themselves. So, like I said, the Astros went 107 and 55, really ran away with it. The A's won or got to the wild card, did not move on in the playoffs, but were 97 and 65. But after the A's, the teams just kind of dipped heavily. The Texas Rangers went 78 and 84. The LA Angels, even though they have not even arguably to me at this point, but arguably the best player in baseball, the Angels, nice Bailey, I appreciate that. The Angels went 72 and 90, and the Seattle Mariners went 68 and 94. So, as I always do this, gonna go with my normal format. The team that went or won the division, the Houston Astros. We're going to talk about them first. Now, if you keep up with baseball, you already know what I need to lead off with. And as much as I don't want to sit here and just, blab about the Astros this entire time, I feel like it would be remiss if I didn't talk about it. If I didn't talk about what the Astros have been doing the last couple years, and truth be told, it's just cheating. Straight up, they cheated. They won the World Series, and within that season, the season before, and if I'm not even mistaken, the season after they won the World Series, they engaged in sign stealing, which unwritten rules of baseball, that's fine. You're allowed to steal signs. But the way that they did it and the way that they relayed the signs is what really got them in a hot water. So For those of you that don't know and don't really follow baseball, here's or even this show, because I did talk about this on the air with my co-host. If you want to go back to some earlier videos, some clips of us talking about it on air, the G and Finn show, it's on the same channel. Just go, I'd say even just a month back, and we were talking about the same thing. But just a quick rundown of the situation. The Astros were caught stealing signs using a camera in the outfield wall, relaying that to a computer, and putting it into an Excel spreadsheet called Codebreaker. So it had an algorithm or some sort of program in it that the more data it collected, the better it was at breaking another team's signs. And the thing is, usually when a batter or a should say a runner or a third base coach or someone like that catches the catcher not necessarily hiding their signs the best, it's difficult for them to relay that information between, the coach and whoever's on base or whoever's at bat. It's difficult to do that, especially when there aren't runners on base. So what the Astros did is it started off kind of as them just being able to do it like, you normally would, just having the information in advance. And then it progressed just a little bit more. So whenever there wasn't anybody on base, the Astros would make a noise somehow, like the infamous beating on a trash can would notify the batter what kind of pitch is coming, whether it's an off-speed pitch like a curveball or a slider or a fastball. Now, while that might not seem like a huge deal to some people, within baseball, that is a massive deal to know essentially not necessarily exactly what type of pitch is coming, but to even know what kind of pitch you need to expect. Now, while that definitely affected, their games it was especially potent at home. I should say that, preface that. It was mostly used at home. You saw a lot of the splits for a lot of the players were much, much better at home than they were away. But as it's gone on and as this investigation has continued, one of the main takeaways for me is just how clueless both Major League Baseball and the Houston Astros ownership group is. Because their owner, Jim Crane, has said some of the most ridiculous things I have ever heard from not just anybody who's been caught cheating, but anybody in sports in general. He's come out since all this has been released and said that one, the punishment that they received was perfectly fine. In fact, he thinks that they should have been lighter, probably, because according to him, AJ Hinch and Jeff Luhnow, they didn't know anything about it. Okay, whatever. Sure, you didn't. And they never came up to Jim Crane and said, we got to stop them from doing this. Nah, that never happened. Sure. And then he says stuff like that. And then when he's asked again about it later, about how that should affect the legacy of that title, he doubles down and he says things like, our actions did nothing to affect us winning the World Series. I'm sorry, but how tone deaf can you be? First, you get caught cheating. Then you say, we didn't really cheat, or our guys didn't know that we were cheating. And then you double down on that and say, essentially saying, our cheating did not help us win the World Series. I'm sorry, but they really should have had the title stripped. If you break this down on even like a player-to-player basis, look, pretty much none of the guys that were caught using steroids or even named in the Senate case about the whole steroid era, if they were even named, not even that they had a flag test, if they were named by Jose Canseco, they're not going to get in the Hall of Fame. That's just how it is. That's what's going on. Guys like that are not making the Hall of Fame. And if you're essentially being punished for life for something like that, and then the Astros essentially get a slap on the wrist, that just shows to me kind of how broken Major League Baseball is with so many of their institutions and so much of what's going on in baseball. It's as simple as that. They should have had the World Series stripped away, and no one should win the World Series that year. I think it's as simple as that. You do that, and all of a sudden, everybody's so much happier about this upcoming season. It's not that hard. With that in mind, I'm looking at this Houston Astros team, and it's still incredible. It's so almost silly to me that this team went out of their way to cheat when you have this much talent, because they had a similar level of talent just like back then. It was just a couple years ago, and this team is so incredibly talented. It's so good. It would still dominate the AL for the most part, and they go and do something like that. But besides the point, that's in the past. I still wouldn't be surprised if these guys get beamed during the season. It really wouldn't surprise me any, but that's besides the point for now. This Houston Astros team is still very good. They were pretty quiet during the offseason, during the winter. With all this going on, they didn't make a whole lot of moves, especially in the limbo of not necessarily having a dedicated general manager. So the two moves that were kind of picked out by MLB.com or MLB Network or whatever you want to call it were the fact that this one is more for the Mets than the Astros. Jake Marisnick, one of their outfielders, was traded to the Mets. I talked about this a little bit more in depth about the player himself and what the Mets are getting. Last week on Friday, the Mets just getting 2 minor league prospects. It's not a huge deal. It's not some sort of world breaker. And the only other move that they made is they signed Dustin Garneau to a 1-year, $650,000 contract. Now, he's essentially just going to be backing up. He's going to be their day-to-day guy behind Martin Maldonado. He'll get some game time, of course, because catchers, they need to switch in and out. And some catchers have a bit of a better rapport with some of the pitchers. It's as simple as that. So, with those just minor changes in mind, let's just move through this roster. This lineup is still one of the best in baseball, and I don't think there's any way around that because, look, George Springer leading off. He is just a great batter. He extends at bats. He hits bombs. It's not hard to see. Same with Bregman batting second. Same with Altuve batting third. Same with Carlos Correa batting fourth. And now, if you watched any of last season, this young kid, Yordan Alvarez, comes in the middle of the year for the Astros and immediately makes an impact on this lineup. And it's not something you would expect out of a young guy like him. He comes in and is immediately mashing. And he's like right now for next season. Let me check how old this guy is. He's not very old. Yordan Alvarez. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick. Yordan Alvarez is 22 years old. 22. He is 1 year older than me. And last season he had 27 home runs at the major league level for the Astros. A 22-year-old kid DHing for this team, batting fifth and hitting almost 30 bombs his rookie year. Okay, just add a little bit more depth. Okay. And don't forget they also have Yuli Gurriel batting sixth, Michael Brantley batting seventh, and Josh Reddick batting eighth. And then their catcher, Martin Maldonado, he's no slouch. He's a much better defensive catcher than he is an offensive catcher, but he is certainly no slouch at the dish. Realistically, this is one of the best lineups in the American League. I expect them to win at least 100 games again next year. It doesn't matter, especially if other teams are dedicated to just hitting these batters. And because so far, as far as I know, none of these guys have come out and said, yeah, we cheated, except guys that aren't on the team anymore. Look, if guys are going to get put on base, the Astros should probably just roll with it and say, okay, cool. We'll take extra bases. We'll win more games that way. It's that simple. And the thing is, this pitching staff lost a very, very big piece this offseason, but they're still probably one of the best in the game. So, if you don't know, they lost Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole signing a monster money deal to play for the New York Yankees. But this pitching staff, this pitching rotation is still very, very good. Headlined by Justin Verlander and Zach Greinke. Lance McCullers Jr. now steps into that third spot. Jose Urquidy, pitching fourth in the rotation, and Brad Peacock pitching fifth, and their closer is, of course, as it was last year, a very, very good closer, Roberto Osuna. The only problem that I could see possibly with this starting rotation is that they're all right-handed, including their closer. I mean, their closer, of course, will be pitching well late into games. That's just what they do. But it seems like this pitching staff just altogether is very right-handed. None of those starting five are lefties. That closer is a right-handed pitcher. That level of, how do I put it? I don't want to say consistency because it's not necessarily a good thing, but that level of kind of just similarity with handedness. Of course, that's still a debate whether handedness really counts or not, really matters. But there are plenty of batters that are much, much better against righties than lefties and lefties than righties. Either way, it's just an incredible lineup from top to bottom, from batting to pitching. And again, I expect this team to just kill it again next year. There's no way around that. And with that in mind, I do think they're going to win the division again next year. But I think that's enough about the Astros and what all they've gone through this winter. Going from there, we move to Oakland, the only other playoff team from the AL West. And they've been kind of quiet. They've been surprisingly quiet. I feel as though this team looked at their success last year and thought, okay, if we can replicate what we did last year, just to a higher degree, because I mean, they're working with some younger guys. Their pitching staff is still working together and gelling together, things like that. That's just how it is for every team. But the only really notable move that this team made is they moved on from Jurickson Profar. They traded him to the Padres for catcher Austin Allen and a player to be named later. Usually when there's a player to be named, it's a guy that's either replacement level or he's a prospect, and it's not somebody who's going to be immediate impact on the field. So for a team that has not made many moves, you can't really complain too much because you're just taking a team that won 97 games last year, which is no joke at all. I mean, getting to the wild card game, actually hosting the wild card game at that, is really nothing to kind of shy away from. So this team is looking to be just about the same, except instead of Jurickson Profar playing second, they're having Franklin Barreto playing second base. And the Athletics kind of go as follows. Marcus Semien coming in playing shortstop. Again, he's a great bat. He's a very strong defensive shortstop, and he really kind of shores up that left side of the middle infield, especially when you have guys like Profar and now Barreto coming in and playing that second base role, where it isn't necessarily their strong suit. They are better defensively than they are at the plate, both of them, I would say. That is Barreto and Profar, but it is really, really important to have a strong shortstop like the Athletics do. And then batting second is, I would say, the biggest bat in their lineup, probably the most dangerous bat, if you ask me. That's Matt Chapman. He batted he did. He batted in the home run derby, I think it was last year. He performed pretty well, if I'm not mistaken. Playing first and batting third would be Matt Olson, and then their DH, who has just been killing it the last couple of years, Chris Davis, DHing, batting cleanup. Arguably holder of one of the best defensive plays I've ever seen from a center fielder. That's Ramon Laureano batting fifth, playing center field. Mark Kanya playing left and batting sixth. Playing in right field and batting seventh is Stephen Piscotty. And then their starting catcher, who actually isn't Austin Allen, who they traded for. Allen's probably going to back up or be kind of a third string guy who's really just there for depth. But batting eighth, their catcher, Sean Murphy. And batting ninth would be their new second baseman, their new starting second baseman, I should say, which is Franklin Barreto. And then there's this pitching staff, which this is a pretty solid pitching staff. There haven't been any changes. There's been maybe some changes when it comes to health, and that's the health of Mike Fiers, who during the offseason obviously had plenty of time to rest and reload. So Mike Fiers would be their kind of first starting pitcher. He's followed up by Sean Manaea, who he's actually the pitcher who started the wild card game last season. And it wouldn't surprise me if he essentially shared time with Fiers instead of it being this guy's number one. It's more of a 1A, 1B kind of thing, which that's something that you always like to have in a pitching staff, is a strong level of depth, especially with the guys at the top of your rotation. Those two are followed up by Frankie Montas, Jesus Luzardo, and AJ Puck. So, what I didn't necessarily like about the Astros rotation is that they're all the same handedness. This is almost the exact opposite. Fires and Montas are both right-handed pitchers. Manea, Luzardo, and Puck are both lefties. And then their closer, Liam Hendricks, who Hendricks, honestly, last season was one of my favorite closers to watch. He was awesome. He's got great stuff and even better velocity on his pitches. And he's a righty as well. So there's a lot of variety going up and down this lineup, or I should say this pitching rotation that should serve well to the A's, to the Oakland A's. And again, staying consistent as they have, it would not surprise me much if this team performed pretty well again this year. If they performed very similarly to as they did last year, hanging around that 90 plus win region. Yeah, probably. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to think because, like I said, I do a little bit, I say a little bit, a good amount of research for each of these episodes. And I know that two of the other teams in this division have really just decided, okay, we're tired of being in the basement of this division. It's time to get good. It's time to load up and try and make a push for the division. So it'll be tough to see how the Athletics play because while they do have a really strong just roster altogether, these other teams are really looking forward to, taking some wins away from the guys at the top. And with that in mind, I think then it's time to look at the Texas Rangers playing in Arlington. I think they do. That sounds about right. The Rangers have been one of the more, how do I put it? One of the more active teams this offseason. We're going to start with the trades that they've made because, the Rangers have made two major trades. One is that they traded Nomar Mazara to the White Sox. That's more of a major move, the fact that Mazara isn't on the team rather than he is, because losing him and losing someone else that they traded away, both of them are outfielders, really allows some of the young guys that they wanted to get into the outfield, letting them get out there and play. So the Rangers traded Nomar Mazara to the White Sox for a minor league outfielder. I don't expect him to get any game time with the team right now this season, but either way, he should be good for them. And then here's the bigger trade for this team is the Texas Rangers traded Emmanuel Clase and Delino DeShields for Corey Kluber from the Indians. So let me break that down a little bit. They traded a young pitcher who doesn't have any MLB experience, really, and an outfielder that can't hit for Corey Kluber, who's one of the better pitchers for the Indians. I mean, yes, he's dealt with injuries in the last couple of years, but I mean, look at it like this. That's essentially taking two guys that either would just get game time because you need the body there, or guys that are going to be on your bench for a starting pitcher that's been one of the better ones in the AL the last couple of years. I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me from the Indian standpoint and sounds like highway robbery for the Ranger standpoint. So he will be bolstering that pitching rotation this season. Other than that, they've made a good fair couple signings. They signed third baseman Todd Frazier, which was very important for this Texas Rangers team to do. Last year, they essentially platooned the position. They had like 5 or 6 guys that ended up playing third base of the team, and none of them succeeded. But Todd Frazier comes in on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. He should be just solid. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for solid production out of third base that they haven't had. Consistent and solid production out of third base that they haven't had a couple years past. Other big signings that they've made, they have a good couple pitching signings, but the only other fielding or batting signing that they've made is they signed catcher Robinson Chirinos on a 1-year, $5.75 million deal. If I'm not mistaken, he immediately steps in and is their catcher. Yeah, he immediately steps in to be their catcher. Also, if I'm not mistaken, the Rangers last year had I want to say the worst producing group of catchers in all of Major League Baseball. So they were both not great defensively and terrible at the plate. So I guess anybody coming in is probably a little bit more upside than you're getting out of the group that left from last season. The other moves that they've made, they brought in Jolie Rodriguez on a 2-year, $5.5 million deal with an option up until or through 2022. There is a team option for that. Rodriguez played for the Rangers back before he ended up. I think he went to Japan to play for a little bit. He was excellent. It was either Japan or Korea. I can't remember really off the top of my head, but either way, wherever he went in Eastern Asia to play baseball, I mean, I gotta say though, they love baseball over there, and they produce a lot of great talent. And we'll get into some Asian talent in Major League Baseball a little bit later when we talk about the Angels. But he went to play over there, played abroad, was excellent, and I mean excellent. I mean all-star level, pitched to like a 1.85 ERA, very very good. They bring him back over, kind of giving him an opportunity, giving him a chance to come in and say, "Look, I belong in the Major League Baseball. I'm going to stick with it for the time being." Other than that, they signed Jordan Lyles on a 2-year, $16 million deal and Kyle Gibson on a 3-year, $30 million deal. Both of those guys will likely end up rounding out that starting rotation. And I have to say, I really like the moves that the Rangers made. I really like the moves. I especially like trading for Corey Kluber when you don't actually have to give up that much. Bringing in guys like Gibson and Lyles, both of those guys are solid end of your rotation kind of pitchers. And this team does have a good fair amount of bats on it. Like, just kind of transitioning into what bats they have. They're led off by Shin-Soo Choo, who has had a long MLB career. He's a veteran guy. Excellent batter. He'll be DHing for them. Batting second for them is Elvis Andrus, playing shortstop. Danny Santana batting third from center field. And the big bat coming out of right field, Joey Gallo. And I've got to say, and this is coming from, if you haven't seen, Major League Baseball has been doing a kind of MLB The Show kind of tournament, or how do I put it? Like season in a way where it's only MLB players playing against each other. And they're all on Twitch. They're all live streamed. So if you end up wanting to go get some actual baseball and get some kind of quotes from MLB players right now, you can go over there and watch them. It's a lot of fun. And I saw a clip of a bunch of pitchers, including guys like Amir Garrett, Blake Snell. There were a couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they were all talking about Joey Gallo, and they're all saying, he was joking with them at the plate, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, he rips one 400 feet, dead center, and it's just out of there. And it's just funny to hear some of these guys talk about some of the power that they faced. And they all said they hate facing Gallo just because he can go from joking and not really paying much attention to just hitting absolute bombs. So that's Gallo batting cleanup. Todd Frazier coming in batting fifth. Willie Calhoun playing left field, batting sixth. Rougned Odor, or should I call right hook Odor? If you've seen that clip of him just absolutely demolishing somebody. Playing second base and batting seventh, Ronald Guzman batting eighth and playing first. And last but not least, Robinson Chirinos playing catcher and batting ninth. So there is a lot of pop to this lineup. Both, I'd say, Gallo, Frazier, Odor, even Andrus. Those are all guys that are very good at the plate and bring a lot of power to your lineup. And this pitching staff, the way that they have it ordered from MLB.com is a little bit weird to me. It suggests that they don't have an out-and-out one. Instead, they probably have, 3 or 4 twos, if you will, instead of just one complete ace. And those pitchers are Mike Minor, a lefty, Lance Lynn, Corey Kluber, Kyle Gibson, and Jordan Lyles, all righties in that order. I would think that they would put Corey Kluber probably higher in this staff, but it's very possible that with Minor and Lynn having more experience with the team, with the coaching staff, and probably not having the same amount of injury concerns as Kluber, that they just wanted to be a little bit more careful and a little bit cautious and just kind of set it up as it is, where Kluber might not get as many starts or as much pitching time, but he's still featuring for this team. And their closer would be Jose Leclerc. And I don't actually have their excuse me, his handedness should not be hard to find. Excuse me. Sorry for this. Leclerc is. Oh, that's not it. That's the White Sox, Astros, Athletics, Mariners. There's the Rangers. Oh, it just doesn't have it on MLB.com. Sorry about that. But it is interesting to see, again, there's a lot of right-handed pitching in this rotation. And Mike Minor is, as far as I know, is the only lefty. But this team has made a lot of moves and a lot of good moves because his pitching staff wasn't very strong, or at least it wasn't very deep last season. And bringing in guys like Kluber, Gibson, and Lyles both add not just a lot of depth, but a lot of talent. Those are good pitchers that are being added to this rotation. And then being able to shore up both third base and catcher in the same offseason, the Rangers, I think, are also on the up. And for a team that should be very much on the rise, the LA Angels, who I've got to say, I'm just going to say it now before I rave about them later, have one of my favorite players in baseball, and he's probably the best player, or he is the best player in baseball, and that's Mike Trout. I don't think that there's really anybody that can compare to him. He is just consistently breaking records, making his way up the list of records and WAR and all that, just making his case for being the best player in baseball and arguably one of the best players to ever play baseball. With all that in mind, they made a couple moves. So I'm going to go with their signings first. And then they made one trade, which wasn't really a huge deal, or it might not be. But so their signings, again, this is a team that had catcher issues last year. Now they've got a catcher. Jason Castro signed with the Angels on a 1-year, $6.85 million deal. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, he'll slot right in as their starting catcher, and that really wouldn't surprise me any. Their pitching, big pitching acquisition, I say big, is Julio Teheran. He is, not I don't want to say not a good pitcher. I think he's a good pitcher, but he's not a great pitcher. I know he pitched for the Braves, I want to say he did last year, but he's just consistently gotten worse. And I think the big issue with that is there's been a big drop off in his fastball velocity and his velocity in general. He went from throwing, average 96, I want to say 95, 96, just 2-3 years ago. And as of now, or as of last season, I think his fastball velocity averaged around 88 miles an hour. And at the MLB level, if you don't have incredible stuff or a fastball that has a lot of movement to it, 88 is how you don't pitch much longer. 88 is where batters are used to that. Batters are expecting faster than that, and they can certainly hit 88, 89. And luckily for the Angels, they only brought him in on a 1-year, $9 million deal. It'll be interesting to see what they do with their pitching staff in general, because that's been their big problem. It really hasn't been their offense, because they have guys like Mike Trout. They can put runs on the board. It's whether they can keep them off the board or not that is an issue. So the big move, though, for the Angels was bringing in a new third baseman. And this is a team that had the worst third base all of last season. Worst position for them was third base. Worst in all of Major League Baseball. Had horrible production from the position. And then they go out and say, okay, so what do we do to fix this? We'll just bring in the most productive third baseman in baseball from last season, Anthony Rendon. Okay, so Rendon earned himself, for winning the World Series, essentially, earned himself a 7-year, $245 million deal. And I gotta say, that's incredible. That's just ridiculous. For a team that hasn't won in the last who knows how long, yeah, I know their owner has a lot of money and really doesn't mind paying the luxury tax, but come on. That's insane. And sure, Rendon was awesome last year. He was incredible. But that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And it will be interesting to see if he can continue his essentially domination of the third base position in all of baseball right now. But it would not surprise me if he did. And the only other move that they made that's major is, so they traded Okay, this is 2 moves, actually. Excuse me, 2 moves. So, sorry, I got confused. I got confused by my own notes, if that tells you anything. They traded Will Wilson and Zach Cozart to the Giants for Garrett Williams. Garrett Williams is probably going to slot into their bullpen somewhere, maybe. This move for the Angels was more about getting Zach Cozart off the books, getting his contract off the books, and that allowed them to bring in Rendon, and that was obviously their big move, their big focus of the offseason. And the only other trade that they made is they traded 4 minor league pitching prospects for Dylan Bundy from the Orioles. Bundy is a guy who has had injury concerns in the past, but the last couple years he's been a lot more consistent and a lot better on the mound. And with all that said, I think then it is time to look at this, excuse me, this team. Coming straight down, batting first would be David Fletcher, their second baseman, who, again, he's a good bat. He's a solid bat, gets on base a lot, especially when you follow him up with these other 2 guys, or these 3 guys at this point. So you got Mike Trout, I've already said it, best player in baseball, playing center field, batting second. And this is where it gets a little bit more interesting to me. They have a Shohei Ohtani slotted in and batting third. So Shohei Ohtani is one of the only two-way players in baseball right now, if I'm not mistaken. He is a great pitcher, very strong pitcher, I'd say. I like him on the mound as well as I like him on at the plate. So he had to get Tommy John surgery last year, and that really limited his time on both for the team, just in general, and especially on the mound. But at the same time, last year, 286 average, solid, 18 home runs, still solid, 62 RBIs for a guy that's rehabbing most of the year because of Tommy John. That's solid production, if you ask me. And from what I've heard, he's also supposed to pitch this year. He's not listed in the Angels starting rotation, but he's supposed to pitch once a week or once every 2 weeks this year. Yeah, they're going to let him take it a little bit more easy, kind of bring that down, but he's still expected to throw. He's expected to pitch, and he's got a good arm on him too. Let me see if I can find those. Pitching. Yeah, he didn't pitch at all last year. Like I said, Tommy John. But year before that, 50-something innings pitched. 4-2 record, 3.31 ERA. That's solid. That's probably middle-year rotation guy. And a guy that can also hit almost 20 home runs a year. You take that. So Shohei Ohtani batting third. Rendon batting cleanup. Justin Upton playing left and batting fifth. He's lost a little bit of the production, lost a little bit of the fleet of foot, his quickness that he's kind of been known for the last couple of years, or through his career, last couple of years, he started to slow down, I should say. Batting sixth would be Tommy La Stella and playing first. Batting seventh is Andrelton Simmons playing short. Jason Castro batting eighth, playing catcher, and Brian Goodwin from right field batting ninth. So I would say that lineup is kind of the strength of this team, and the pitching staff really doesn't hold a candle to it. It's not a good pitching rotation. It's pretty bad, if I'm being honest. So it says actually their starter or their number one guy would be Julio Teheran, who was almost, or he would not even almost, he was left off the Braves playoff roster last year just because he wasn't performing. He was not playing well, and he's supposed to be the number one pitcher for the Angels. That's something you got to work on. Andrew Heaney coming in second, Dylan Bundy third, Griffin Canning fourth, and Matt Andriese are pitching fifth. And their closer is Hansel Robles. It's not a good pitching rotation. It's not very good. Overall, the staff, not great. And really, the only way that I could see it being marginally better is if Ohtani is added to that, if they consider Ohtani a pitcher as well as a batter. And I do think he'll pitch. He is slated to pitch. From everything I've heard, he's completely healthy. He's healed. He's going to throw. That's what I've heard. And that makes it a marginally better. That makes it a little bit better. But really, with a pitching staff like that, in a rotation like that, I don't, even though they bring in Rendon, I don't see the Angels better than the Rangers. I don't see the Angels better than the Athletics. And I certainly don't see the Angels better than the Astros. And what that tells me is that the Angels are investing their money in the wrong things. Did they need a third baseman? Yes. Did they have to go out and spend all their money on Rendon? Not necessarily. Could they have gotten more pitching stat or more pitching depth or more pitching help in general with that money? Probably. I would almost say certainly they could have, because that's a lot of money off the books, or on the books, I should say, that you're missing out on using. And with a team that is this thin at pitcher, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know really what management is up to, because I don't see Teheran being able to really bolster this pitching staff. Will he be better than they were last year? Maybe. But at the same time, over the last couple of years, Teheran's gotten worse. Bundy has just been consistently mediocre. He's been okay, but he played for the Orioles. Sure, some people would say, oh, I play for the Orioles, that whole team's bad, whatever. Sure, but it's not like he was their starting, he wasn't their ace. He was good for them. And I mean, with that outlook, do I think the Angels are better? Yeah. Do I think they're incredibly better? No. I think they're better, yeah. But I don't think any of the moves that they made, apart from bringing in Rendon, will make them so much better that they make a splash in the division. And last, and certainly least, the Seattle Mariners. They have been, I don't want to say busy, but they've made a couple moves this offseason, but I don't think it's really going to do much for them. I think they're in rebuild mode. They're starting to look at this team and say, okay, this isn't going the right way. We need to make some moves for some young guys. So they traded their catcher, Omar Narvaez, to the Brewers. We talked about that last week. Narvaez, one of the better hitters in baseball as a catcher, for seemingly no reason, because he doesn't hit the ball very hard. He doesn't hit it very far. And he doesn't hit it all that often. We don't understand. But either way, he is no longer with the Mariners. He is playing with the Milwaukee Brewers. They brought in Carl Edwards Jr., a pitcher, on a 1-year, $950,000 deal. And they also traded for Nestor Cortez Jr. for some international signing money. And they also signed Kendall Graveman for a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. He should slot into that starting rotation with the Mariners, but even then, I don't think it's very good. So this is how this team kind of lines up right now. Batting first is Shed Long Jr. from second, Kyle Lewis from left field, Kyle Seager from third, not to be mistaken with his brother, Daniel Vogelbach DHing and batting cleanup, Tom Murphy, their catcher, new starting catcher, batting fifth, J.P. Crawford from shortstop, batting sixth, Evan White at first base, batting seventh, Jake Fraley from right field, batting eighth, and Malik Smith batting at ninth. Now, this is one that is a little bit interesting, I guess. An interesting four-note kind of thing with this team is, instead of Jake Fraley, Mitch Haniger should start in right field, but he had sports hernia surgery, and his return date is still up in the air. It's unclear. I wouldn't be surprised if it's sooner than later in the start of the season with, the delay, but I don't know if that's much of a difference maker. I think he's a lot better than his replacement, but I don't think it'll be much of a difference maker for this team, because I don't think this team is very good. Then you've got the pitching staff, Marco Gonzalez first, Yusei Kikuchi second, I think it's Eustace or Justice Sheffield in third. An incoming pitcher, Kendall Graveman, pitching fourth, and Taijuan Walker pitching fifth, and their closer is Matt McGill. I don't think this team has made enough moves to really make a splash. I think this team is going to continue to not be very good, but I do think that this team is making some moves in the right direction, bringing in guys like Sheffield and investing in guys like Malik Smith, even Kyle Seager. They're younger guys. Look, it's a team that's still growing and a team that is still rebuilding after a level of success over the last 2 decades. I do think the Mariners are going to be bad next year, but at the same time, I think they're on their way up. I think that they're rebuilding still. They're growing. And with that said, I now think it's time to go back and look at this division just as a whole and see where it's at, because there's been a lot of improvement and a lot of staying still. So the Astros, they kind of held steady with their team as is, but that's okay because it was incredible last year. It's going to be incredible next year. I think the Astros are by far and away the best team in the AL West. I don't think that there's much competition either. The Oakland A's as well. They're good. They're very good. They made the playoffs last year, and for good reason. I think they'll be good again next year. And I think that they. Let me take another look at this Rangers lineup and roster, because the difference there isn't a small one. It's like 20 games. It's 18, 19 games, and that's a huge jump if they were to make that. I mean, even looking at the additions that they made, I don't think that they're 20 games worth. You know what I mean? So keeping the Astros first, keeping the A's second, and the Angels to Rangers difference is very slight, though. It's only 6 games. Do I think bringing in guys like Rendon and Teheran and other pitchers like that to bolster that rotation, do I think that those guys are 6 games worth? No, I don't think so. Even if Ohtani pitches next year and pitches well, they're going to have to limit his pitch count because he'll be both batting and pitching. And also, he's coming off Tommy John surgery. That's major. That's not something that guys get over quickly. So, with that in mind, I'm gonna keep the division exactly the same. Astros winning it next year. I know they aren't cheating, but it still kind of pains me to say that, just because in a way it did ruin the integrity of the game for the last couple years, and I do think MLB was too light on them, but I think I've said my piece on that. If you want more in depth, if you want a little bit more, anger, if you will, you can go back and listen to some of the older shows that I did with John while school was still going on earlier this semester. But I think the Astros win the division. The A's come second. Rangers again come third. I do think that they get a lot better, though. I think they get a lot closer to the A's, but I do still think they come in third. The Angels come in fourth. I do think that they get better as well, but that pitching staff is still very bad. And the Seattle Mariners come last. I think they're rebuilding. They're just a young team that is growing. And with that said, I do have a little bit of an announcement. So if you follow sports, you know that this week, or the end of this week, the 23rd to the 25th, is the NFL draft. So we're going to have a little bit of a break from the baseball. We're going to get back to the American League next week on Monday. And the Wednesday and Friday show of this week, Wednesday is going to be a pre-show for the draft. And I will be pulling up probably Mel Kiper, probably one of the ESPN mock drafts. We're going to be rolling through that. We're going to take a look at each player and each team. It might end up being a bit of a longer stream just because there are a lot more players and a lot more teams in all of the NFL. So we're going to, like I said, I'm going to take a look through all those on Wednesday. And then by Friday, the first round of the draft will be over. So we're going to compare the mock draft to what actually happened. And I think I'm going to go with a Kiper draft only because he doesn't predict trades. And I think that's probably better than others that do predict trades, because trades are a lot more, what's the word for it? They're unpredictable. I mean, it's hard to predict what a team's going to do in the moment, at the snap of a finger, at the drop of a hat on the draft floor, even though it is all virtual. Everybody's going to be in direct contact with everybody, be that over the phone or on some sort of, streaming service. So probably we're going to do that on Wednesday. And then on Friday of this week, we're going to do a post-draft. We're just going to talk about the first round just because it'll be a lot more clean that way. It'll be a lot more concise. It won't end up being, 2 hours and me talking about 64 different players and picks and whatever trades happen, because it's the draft. Anything can happen. And I know some trades are bound to happen. And with all that said, I'm very excited for the draft. I am very excited to be back in this seat talking to you guys on Wednesday afternoon. And with that, that is all I have for you guys today. I have been George Ruggiero. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, thank you guys all for the support. I hope everybody is out there staying safe and doing well. Until then, I will see you guys back here Wednesday afternoon, 5 p.m., NFL pre-draft. Peace.